All right, Genesis chapter 46. There's only 50 chapters. We're getting close. All right, chapter 25. Remember, think about being one of Joseph's brothers. You go and stand before the man again, the prime minister of Egypt, knees knocking. He has the ability to throw you into prison. You're being accused of stuff. And then he reveals that he's your long lost, forgotten about, thought he was dead brother. Now, your knees are probably knocking even more because you remember what you did. But we see that beautiful picture of the grace extended from Joseph to his brothers. Now, a lesser man might have been like, well, you know what? I spent at least 2 years in prison. I'm going to forgive you, but you're going to have to spend 2 years in prison. He doesn't do that. He says no. He was like, God ordained this to happen. And what he'll say in chapter 50 is, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Why? It's because he was there to be that salvific figure for Israel so that Israel would survive this time of famine. It's just, and when you look at this, especially this part of Joseph's narrative, we see some foreshadowing of Jesus, which is just really, really neat. I love it. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. 46 verse 1. So Israel took his journey with all they had and came to Beersheba. Why is Beersheba important? That is the southernmost town before you leave the promised land. And when he went there, he stops. And why does he stop? He offers a sacrifice to the God of his father, Isaac. We know the God of his father is who? The Lord. Yahweh. Yahweh Elohim. He's to the Lord. I mentioned this before, and I'll ask again. Why did he stop at the southernmost point of the promised land? He wanted to make sure that, Lord, if you really want me to do this. Remember, his grandpa, Abraham, went there twice. There was nothing good that happened. Remember, he went down once, and then he left with a girl, Hagar. And we still have problems. That's where the lineage of the Arab nations come. And there's always been this issue between the Arabs and the Jews. And he was outside of God's will. Now his dad, Isaac, didn't actually go down there, but he was actually looking to go down there, but didn't actually go down there. So going down into Egypt is something that's outside of God's promised land. So he sees the significance of that, and he wants to, I'm willing to do it, Lord, but I want to make sure that this is what you want me to do before I do it. It speaks really to Israel, Jacob. He's actually maturing a bit in his spiritual faith. Beersheba was a big point in earlier in the book of Genesis. I was trying to think of the covenant with King Abimelech. Was there with Abraham. We saw that. So this town has significance in the Old Testament, but the biggest thing is the southernmost part. And he gets there and he offers a sacrifice. He worships God. And then God spoke to Israel in the vision of the night. And he said, Jacob, Jacob. I wonder why he says Jacob, Jacob. He changed his name to Israel. He's being referred to in the text as Israel.
I've heard the reason why.
Go for it.
Because Jacob has to bring his old stuff with him. He has to bring Jacob and his past. He has to bring that with him.
He is. He's bringing all of that with him, and he's actually going to note his past when he speaks to Pharaoh. Now, some of this is conjecture. We don't know absolutely with some stuff, but it's neat to think about. So yeah, I agree with you. So, then God spoke to Israel in the vision of the night. And he said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And I think he was wanting to hear from God. He wanted a clear word from God. Am I doing the right thing? Because remember, chapter 45, his sons come back and they're like, hey, Joseph's still alive. He's the prime minister. He's the leader over in Egypt. I doubt that Jacob believed him. You got to remember, Joseph's brothers, connivers, liars, murderers. I mean, if there was a sin, one of them boys probably did it. They had a history. So I don't think Jacob probably believed them. But then he saw all of the wagons that came in. It was that physical thing that came from Pharaoh, all the grain and the stuff. And when he saw that, then he believed and was willing to come down. But now he needs this word from the Lord. He needs this so that he knows that he's doing the right thing. So he said, that's God, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt. Well, obviously, that implies that Israel was fearful. One, he's going outside of the promised land. You start getting a little ways from home, there's some natural fear there. Are we going to be met with hostility? Or is this what's going to happen? But I think for Jacob in this it was fear of going outside of what God wanted for them and wanted for him. So don't be afraid. I'm telling you that this is okay. For I will make of you a great nation. Now, where did we hear that before? Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant. That's been a little bit quiet in the recent chapters. This just reinforcing of the covenant that God has His people. But He reinforces this. I will make you a great nation there. Now, that is an interesting idea in and of itself. We know that there's a famine that sends them down there. But why make a great nation there? Now we know that they're going to go down with roughly, it's going to be 70 people that they go down there with. At least that's what the text tells us. They're going to leave with close to 2 million people in 400 years. That's a lot of people. He makes them a great nation. But why does He choose Egypt to make them a great nation? That's the part that I think is so neat. We talked about before that shepherds, those that dealt with livestock, nomadic type livestock, they worked with animals and stuff, they were despised by the Egyptians. They were a lesser class of people. They were not allowed to enter into an Egyptian temple. God was very intentional with this. Now, if they had sought refuge by someone that was one of the people groups in the area of Canaan, they might have assimilated and actually took on some of the attributes of those people. But the Egyptians were so biased that they would not assimilate. They could not be necessarily turned into Egyptians. Think about the United States. 400 years ago, we weren't even the United States, but if you were to bring in 70 Swiss people, by 400 years, they would have been in society. They would be Americans. They would be in every aspect. They would not hold on to that particular identity that they have. Not so with this. And that's the reason why I believe God chose Egypt, because they would have to live separately. They weren't even allowed at the dinner table with the Egyptians, so that they would not lose what made them Jews. Well, they're not called Jews yet, but what made them Hebrews, what made them distinct. And they would not be affected by their foreign gods because they weren't even allowed to go into the temples. God allowed, somebody used it as it said that Egypt was a womb by which the Israel would grow. And I just thought that was very interesting when we look at that. So, I will make you a great nation there, and I will go down with you. The Lord says, I will go down with you. Now, Jesus gives a similar promise to those that follow Him, His disciples. Do you remember what He said? Yep, I will never leave you or forsake you. There we go. I will never leave you or forsake you. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. This is talking about the Exodus, that this is going to happen. If you would, look at Genesis 15. Genesis 15, I believe it'll be around verse 16. God is the master painter. And what we need to make sure we realize is He knows the beginning from the end. And He aligns all this stuff up to work His will. And in verse 15, now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. Who's He talking about? Abraham. But in the 14th generation, they shall return here. Return where? Back to the land of promise. 14th generation, you shall return here. For the iniquities of the Amorites is not yet complete. There was a separation, I believe, that needed to happen between the children of Israel and these other tribes, the Amorites and stuff like that. This needed to happen, and that's why they went down to Egypt. But also, think about this. God was showing grace to the Amorites, saying their iniquity had not reached that boiling point by which God would then use Israel to judge them. Now, when we read Joshua and they cross the Jordan and they start going over and they start taking out all these cities, you can read that and be like, man, that's a little rough. But 400 years, I think He extended, the Lord did, He extended grace, and they would have no part of it. They would have no part of it. As He promised them, you will come back. And that's what we're going to see in the book of Exodus. This coming back, this exodus that will take place. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. This is actually a beautiful picture. He is telling Jacob, Israel, that not only have you heard that your son is alive, but he will actually be the one who is by your side when you die. Of course, still today, you could say, but especially in that time, it was a very special thing. The person who was able to go to their family member and actually close their eyes after they pass. Because usually a lot of times when people die, their eyes are open. So to close, He'll be the one that closes your eyes. That is, and for Jacob, that is the ultimate promise. Because he's the favorite son. He's the one, he loves this boy. And to be able to say that I'm going to be with him and he's going to close my eyes when I pass, I'm going to go to the grave being with my son. I bet you hit the smile that popped on his face. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob. They carried him because he is about 130 years old or so now. So he's not lefty-righting a whole lot. He's old. Carried Israel their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives, and their carts which Pharaoh had sent to him. So they took their livestock, their goods which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants, his sons and his sons' sons and his daughters. Note that last word, plural, daughters. What's the one daughter that we know about of Jacob's? Dinah. We know that because there was a whole mess at Shechem because of her. Not because of her, but she was the victim. But in the Old Testament, the way that they wrote was a lot of times some of the women are not mentioned unless they were. So especially if you see a lady's name, a lot of times it's very important. They played a very important role. Note in Jesus' genealogy, you see 4 women. Those were 4 very important women in the lineage of Christ. So it sounds like he had some other daughters. And his sons' daughters and all his descendants he brought with him down to Egypt. All right, now we're going to get to one of these fun lists of names. Now, but before we get there, I want to just go over a couple of things of what we just read. They're going down as guests of Pharaoh. That's not going to last long because the word there is they're going to go as to sojourn, temporary status. You got a temporary visa. But unfortunately, that temporary visa turned into slavery for them. And in 400 years, some say about 430 years, I won't get into the dates and nerd out too much, they will eventually, after the plagues and Pharaoh had enough after the loss of the firstborn, they're going to let them go. And they'll go back up into the promised land. But there is a typology here of Christ. And I just want to make sure that we mention this. Egypt, the world; Joseph, a foreshadowing of Christ; Israel, the church. You have Joseph, this foreshadowing of Christ, who was not received the first time by his brothers and was actually thought to be dead, but comes back, and then he's actually a blessing on the brethren. And I don't have time to get into it, but we could go into Romans chapter 11, where Paul talks about that Israel will be saved. This Israel, when they finally receive at the second coming their Messiah, that they looked upon the one that they have pierced, Isaiah says, Revelation 21 verses 2 and 3, the New Jerusalem. And I believe that is going to be Jews in the New Jerusalem. So I don't want to, that'll be a study for another time, because if not, I'll get on a side. But there is a great picture here. And just the way that Joseph saves Israel, his family, from the fallenness of the land with the famine, like Christ saves us from the fallenness of the world. It's just super cool when you go in and you look at the foreshadowings of Christ in the Old Testament. Super neat. All right. And God's people, oh, that was the other thing. And God's people here, Israel, the word sojourn, to be a guest in Egypt, the world. We are called to be in the world, but not of the world. This is not our home. We now have, if you are in Christ, you have a heavenly home. So we are sojourning until Christ either comes back or we die and we go to be with Him. So either way, we're sojourners, aliens, so to speak, in this world. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, let's see. Names are important in the Old Testament. Names are very important. Here's an example. Reuben, behold a son. Simeon, heard. Levi, joined. Judah, praised. Joseph, he will add. Benjamin, the son of my right hand. And I've went through before how I think even these names have meaning. So as we go through the names here in 46, I'm going to give you what these names mean. Now you can take it for what it is, but there are some theologians I've heard really kind of put these together, and it sounded kind of cool, but I think a little bit of that's conjecture, so I don't want to go too far into that. Now these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. And then we have Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanak, dedicated; Palu, distinguished; Hezron, surrounded by a wall or enclosed; Carmi, my vineyard. So dedicated, distinguished, surrounded by a wall, my vineyard. Now you can go with whatever you want to. And the sons of Simeon were Jemuel, the day of the Lord; Jamin, which is right hand; Ohad, which is united; Jachin, he will establish; Zohar, brightness or whiteness. He will establish brightness or whiteness, purity. Shaul, asked for, son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, which is a stranger or exile; Kohath, which is assembly; Merari, bitter; Judah, which we know means praise; which means to awake or watchful; Onan, strong; Shelah, a petition; Perez, breakthrough; Zerah is rising or a dawning. And I believe it noted that, and Onan died in the land of Canaan, so they didn't actually go way down. And then the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamuel. Hezron, enclosed or surrounded; Hamuel is saved. Sons of Issachar, to bring reward is his name, is Tola, worm. Now that is symbolic of humility there. Tola, worm, symbolic of humility. Puva, which is splendid or shining. Job, persecuted or hated. Some believe this could be Job from the book of Job. There's nothing else really to say that other than some people think that. I mean, I don't know. You could do your own research, and if anyone finds, because I've got way too much stuff I'm researching right now, if you can find out that that's Job that's connected, get with me. I would love to read about that. But you had Job there. Persecuted or hated. Now, Job did get some persecution, so that's the right name for him. Shimron, which is watchful or a guardian. Zebulun, glorious abode or a glorious dwelling place. Sirid, which is fear or trembling. Elon, oak tree, symbolic of strength. Jalah, which is God waits or a hope in God. Now the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid. We have Gad, which means a troop, and you have Ziphon, which is a lookout or observation. Haggai, which is festive or my feast. Shuni, which is changed or fortunate. Zebon, which is hastening to understand. Possibly it could mean to enlarge. Era, which is to be watchful or awake. Arodai is I shall subdue. Arilai is lion of God. Now, then you have Asher, which means happy or blessed. I have a friend who had named their son Asher, and I think that was appropriate. You have Imnah, which is the right hand. Now, your translation might use a U instead of a V in the next two names, like Ishua, but really Hebrew, that should be a V. So it should be Ishva, which is he resembles or equality. Ishvi is the next one, which is a resemblance or he is like. And then Berai, which is with trouble. Sarai, which is abundance. And then the sons of Berai were Huber, companion, and Melchilel, my king is God. Total, 16 souls, or people, you could say. King James says souls. I actually like the way it sounds. From Zilpah, verse 18. And then the sons of Rachel. We have Joseph. Joseph, he will add. And then you have Manasseh, which is causing to forget. Ephraim, fruitful. Benjamin, second son. You have the son of my right hand. And then from Benjamin, we have Bela, which is destruction or a swallowing up. We have Becher, which is a firstborn or youth. We have Ashbel, which is man in God. That could also be a negative term. It could be man in God or a man of Baal. That's an interesting thing. Gura, which is grain or a kernel, you could say. Man is the next one. N-A-A-M-A-N. Man is pleasant or delightful. You have Ehi, which is my brother. You have Rosh, which is head or chief. You have Muppim. I like these two names, Muppim and Huppim. Muppim, which is a serpent. Huppim, protected or protected one. And Ard, fugitive or wanderer, 14 souls from Rachel. That's verse 22. And then we have the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid. And we have Dan, which means to judge. We have Hushim, which is hasty or one who makes haste. You have Naphtali, my wrestling. You have Jahaziel, which is God's appointed, allotted by God. Guni or Gunai, which is protected or defended. Jezer, which is formed or shaped. Shelim, which is repaid or restored. 70 souls from Bilhah. And then we have the final summary. Look at verse 26. And all the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. And all the persons of the house of Jacob, who went into Egypt, were 70. Pastor Johnathan, Acts gives us a different number. Isn't there a discrepancy in the Bible? Turn to Acts chapter 7, verse 14. No, there's not a discrepancy in the Bible. But just in case someone ever says this to you, I want to be able to give you the weaponry by which to address this. Acts 7, verse 14. Stephen addressing the Sanhedrin. And the second time, verse 13, that Joseph was made known to his brothers, and Joseph's family became known to Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent and called his father Jacob and all his relatives to him. 75 people. Well, to understand that, what do we have to do? We go to 1 Chronicles, and as soon as I remember where I put that note, 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 5. 1 Chronicles. My flipping fingers are a little bit slow today. Come on. 1 Chronicles 2, 5. And here is the answer. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. Now, we just heard those names, didn't we? Go to verse 6. We didn't hear these names. The sons of Zerah. Those, count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They just were not noted in the record that was given there. It's not that they just didn't note, and most likely because they believe it doesn't directly relate, their lineage doesn't directly relate to the Messianic lineage, so it was probably, they didn't see it as being important. Moses maybe didn't see it as being important. It's nothing where there's anything to it. It's just that Stephen noted these 5 guys where the other ones didn't. And if you want to pronounce those, have fun. Zimri, Ethan, He-Man. I remember I used to watch that cartoon when I was a little kid. It's probably He-Man, Calcol, Dara, 5 of them in all. So there is no discrepancy in the Bible. It is noted, it's right here in 1 Chronicles. There's not a discrepancy in the Bible. So if anyone tries to throw that out at you, chances are that would have to be in the quite studious atheist to do that. But you do bump into those people every while. They want to try and mess with you a little bit. Well, the Bible does have a discrepancy in it. Here it is right here. No. All right, so 70 went down. Then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen. Note this. This is kind of interesting. Judah is being noted as kind of this, he's leading the way. This guy's got a bit mature. We saw that in the previous chapters. And now he's kind of leading the family's way to get to this salvific land where they'll be able to prosper and where Israel will be able to grow. So I don't know about the other boys. As you'll see, Levi and Simeon are actually left out of in terms of the tribes when Jacob adopts Manasseh and Ephraim, but we'll get to that later. But he's being a standout guy, this guy. He's really looks like he's maturing. Good for him. So Joseph made ready his chariot. Now, made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father. He literally hinged his chariot to go up there. And imagine Joseph had a nice chariot. Remember, this is the second most powerful person in the nation. Pharaoh, do you think Pharaoh would pay taxes? No. As we'll get into that here soon about the taxes too. Do you think Joseph paid taxes? Probably not. Probably not. He was a government employee. He probably didn't pay no taxes either. So he probably had one of those real nice chariots that when it stopped, the wheels were still spinning. That's for those that grew up in the late 90s and 2000s that know what I mean by that. All right. So Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he presented himself to him, and he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Suddenly, Joseph was 17 years old again. Hadn't seen his dad at least 22 years. Falls on his dad's shoulders. And they just have a weep and cry. And this is just a good moment of, because this whole time he thought his son was dead. And Israel said to Joseph, now let me die since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. That was the one thing that he wanted. That was the one thing he wanted. But he's really going to live for like another 17 years, so he ain't going to die right away. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock. And they have brought their livestock, or they brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. Now that's also an interesting thing, that Jacob was willing to pack up everything to go. This was a step of faith on his part. That's all for a long time, that's all he knew was there. Now he's bounced around a little bit, but that's all he knew for a long time, to have the faith to pack up the entire family, everybody, and I'm going to follow what God has. I'm making sure God at Beersheba, but now I'm going down. I'm all in. Everything they has is going, they're there. And so it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and say, what is your occupation? That you shall say, your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth even till now, both we and our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. And I think there's a reason why. This was a fertile land. This was a good area. And I think he wanted to make sure, as we see here in the future, there's going to be a lot of the people that are collected up and they're brought into the cities. This is a smart thing. This is because they really have to, the people are going to be on government assistance. So it's smart to consolidate the people, so it's probably easier to hand out rations. But I think he sends them to this area, this fruitful area, so that they won't be a part of that mass groupings in these cities where disease and sickness could go through the people groups rather easy. Even from our youth, Goshen, for every shepherd. There we go. I'll make sure I note this. Both we and our fathers, that you will dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. I made a note right here in my Bible. What could go wrong? Going to hang out with a group of people that think you're an abomination. Well, we'll see. Once there's a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph, then it happens. What could go wrong? These people hate you. Or, well, not so much, I don't think it's so much an active hate, but it's a looking down upon. They were a lower class of people. They obviously had some sort of class system, and they were a lower class. They've actually found pictures, because you go to Egypt, they have all those pictures and stuff, and they found pictures, these engravings, that depict shepherds, and they always look skinny, and they've got rough-looking, crazy-looking beards, like mine before too long without trim. They just look unkempt. They just not look good. So that's what they thought of them, as skinny, these kind of, and you can see that in the artwork that they have uncovered there. Now, we have 5 minutes, and we're going to touch verse 1 of chapter 47 real quick. Then Joseph went, and he told Pharaoh, and said, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Now, whose names do you see noted there? Which brothers? You don't see anybody's name. Well, with like most Old Testament stuff, there are rabbinical or Jewish traditions, like the church has tradition as well, that says who they believe that these people are. They believe it was Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Now, why would he pick? I wonder if he picked the ones that actually depicted, these are the scoundrels, these are the roughest looking brothers I got, to actually, they look like, maybe that way that Pharaoh just keep them up there. Keep them away from everybody else. We'll just keep them up there. but no names are given. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to dwell," that word dwell, to sojourn, temporary. That's a temporary status. To sojourn in the land, because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. So they are asking permission, and they're being very respectful. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brother have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you." Strong statement. "Have your father and your brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen." That was the best for agriculture and for the flocks and stuff. So that's good. And if you know any competent men among them, if there's somebody who's just stellar, make them chief herdsmen over my flock as well. Why is Pharaoh being so giving? That's a question for you. We will see in this chapter, one, Joseph's already done tremendous things. And maybe he thinks, one, that there's a smart brother like Joseph that might be able to take care of his herds and everything and be a good chief of all of his animals. But also, as we're going to see here in a minute, not only does Joseph benefit Pharaoh, Joseph blesses Pharaoh in a tremendous way, and Pharaoh is going to prosper. When I say Pharaoh prospers, he is going to consolidate and have all of the wealth of Egypt. But before we close, there's one funny thing I got to note here. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Scraggly, old man, doesn't even have a place to lay his head, so to speak. They're asking for land so they can live, but yet Jacob blesses Pharaoh. Once again, the greater blesses the lesser. And no matter what status this man has as king in Egypt, he still is not to the level of Jacob in the eyes of God. What can that tell us? I don't care what kind of car you drive. I don't care what titles you have before your name or how big your house is. That does not mean that God is impressed. God does not look at any of that. He looks at the heart. And we see that here. But this part here, verse 8. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How old are you?" Why would he ask that? Well, if you look at even some of the evidence that they've been able to, the Egyptologists, the average age for an Egyptian during this time was 50 years old. So you have Jacob coming in here, what, more than twice that age. And that is something I don't think Pharaoh has seen. Their life expectancy, I believe, was far. It was far. I don't think he had experienced that. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, "How old are you?" Because he is legitimately wondering. And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130. Pharaoh, 130 years. But look how he describes his years. Because to Pharaoh, he's like 130 years old. You got to be joshing me. 130 years old. Few and evil, raha, that Hebrew word that we've gone over before. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their... I'm not even as old as my dad and my grandpa. But is Jacob really wrong? What was the day? He says few. Well, in comparison to Grandpa Abraham, and then the ones that came before him, absolutely there's few of days. But evil are the days. Remember everything that Jacob's gone through. Jacob had a split family right from the get-go with Rebekah and his dad Isaac, both favoring people, favoring the different sons. That was damage into their relationship, damage into the whole family unit. He cheats his brother a little bit, has to run for his life, goes to Haran, goes over there to Uncle Laban, finally meets his match, so to speak, with Uncle Laban, gets bamboozled into marrying the wrong woman. After working really hard for Rachel, has to work the additional years to actually get Rachel after he had Leah, and then worked additionally so that he could get a portion of the flock and all that. When he leaves there, he's a bit of a snake and leaves at midnight. Doesn't even tell Laban he's going because Laban was going to give him a hard time. And then as he goes, he's going to meet his brother Esau. He's thinking Esau's going to kill him. So he goes and just bows down a whole bunch and begs Esau pretty much not to kill him. And then, hey, I'll meet you over here. He beelines it, goes another direction. This guy's life, and not to mention his sons. Okay, we'll go up here we'll go and hang out near Shechem. Then his boys go and massacre the whole city of Shechem, all the guys, and steal all their stuff and loot them. He has experienced pain. And there's been and a lot of it has been pride, and it has been his own hard-headedness that went, and I don't think necessarily the sin of the fathers on the sons, but what we teach our sons is a big deal, and what we teach our daughters. And he has not always been the good example. But then he didn't have the best example either. But God, think about that. The heel grabber, deceiver, Jacob. God still loved him. And God let him, in many cases, I think he punished himself. Well, until God wrestled with him and made it where he couldn't run no more. And then he finally said, okay, got his attention. But God still loved him. Good news for you today. If you're a deceiver, if you're one that's been running from God, if you're a knucklehead in the faith, He still loves you. That don't mean that He's not going to let your sin mess you up a little bit until you finally have that epiphany and that, oh God moment, and then you come back to Him. Hopefully you're not walking like a limp like Jacob did. But He's going to bring him back. It's good news in this story. As hard-headed as he was, God still blessed him, still loved him. So that's our prayer. As hard-headed as we can be, God still loves you, and He does want to bless you. The thing is, you got to be walking in the fullness of the Spirit. He ain't going to bless you if you go off doing your own thing. He's going to get your attention. He's going to give you a spiritual spanking. He's going to let you want to do that? That's not going to end well. But He still loves you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? We only got about 2 more Wednesdays, and we are done. I might push through a little bit more. Yeah, 2 Wednesdays probably max, and we're going to be getting through. Because this next section, we've just got like a couple main things I'm going to talk about, but we'll be good. All right. Let's pray. Pastor Joe, close us in prayer, sir. That way you don't have to keep hearing me.
God, just thank you for tonight. Thank you for those that are here. Lord, thank you for your truth and just a reminder of everything that Jacob went through. And he was very real with Pharaoh. You think of going to the President of the United States and telling me my life has been few and years have been evil. It's just, he didn't hold any punches. He was very real. And God, I just hope everybody here has a real relationship with you. Thank you for what you've done in his life, the example that it's given to us. 130 years old when he made a 300-mile plus trip. You knew where he wanted him. You let him know when he needed to go. You encouraged him. You reminded him in a dream. It's time, and you're good, and this is part of my plan. So God, just help us rest in your truth and what you have for our lives, and just trust you. Jacob did not have your word. He had the words of his father, but he did not have the Bible. It's amazing to me that these men followed you. It wasn't perfect, but they didn't have the Bible like we do either. So, it's just a lot of uncertainty numerous times, but they trusted you the best they could, and you just blessed them. And God, and that's us. We just trust you and follow you the best we can. Your blessings will follow. So just thank you for tonight. Those that are here, those who couldn't be here for whatever reason, Lord, a lot of sickness, and maybe other reasons, just look over them tonight. And just thank you for your truth and just how it's encouraging and how it helps us, and how it's just a blessing in our lives. So we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.